This is a HeadGum podcast.
Hello, and welcome to Good One, a podcast about jokes. I'm your host, Vulture Senior Editor, Jesse David Fox. How are you? Oh, all right. So this week we wanted to give you a little something different in our continued mission to open up the world behind what we all find funny. At Vulturefest LA last fall, we at Vulture invited Mike Schur and the rest of the writers of The Good Place for a panel discussion. The panel was confidently moderated by Marc Evan Jackson, the host of The Good Place podcast, who you might also know from playing Sean the Demon on The Good Place, and Halt's husband Kevin on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or like a million other parts here and there. There was just so much interesting, funny stuff that I felt like the listeners of this podcast would enjoy hearing it. At minimum, both Good Place and Good One have good in the title, which is not nothing. So first you'll hear a clip from this past season of The Good Place, and let's just have a blanket spoiler alert for anyone who's not caught up, in which Michael, played by Ted Danson, and Janet, played by Darcy Carden, explain how time works in this universe in a way that is a bit like how you'd write Jeremy Bearimy in cursive. For fans of the show, they know exactly what I'm talking about. For not fans of the show, you are very confused. We'll be back next week with a traditional episode with a great joke and a great comedian. But until then, I turn it over to Mark.
Well, this sucks.
So, to sum up, there is a heaven and hell. We've been to hell, and now, no matter how good we are for the rest of our lives, we're going back to hell.
Again, it's not the classic Christian hell, but that's the gist, yes. As soon as you learned about the afterlife, your motivation to be good was corrupted, so you can't earn points anymore. So sorry for eternally dooming you.
And that's our bad, guys.
So, all the attempts you made to torture us, we must have been in the afterlife for 100 years.
Almost 300, actually.
Well, how is it possible that all these things happened to us, but no time passed on Earth? Did you go back in time to save us?
I didn't have to because of Jeremy Bearimy.
Who's Jeremy Bearimy?
Okay. Things in the afterlife don't happen while things are happening here. Because while time on Earth moves in a straight line, one thing happens, then the next, then the next. Time in the afterlife moves in a Jeremy Bearimy.
What?
In the afterlife, time doubles back and loops around and ends up looking something like Jeremy Bearimy. This is the timeline in the afterlife. Happens to kind of look like the name Jeremy Bearimy in cursive English, so that's what we call it.
Sorry, my brain is melting. How can events happen before the ones that happened before?
Just the way it works. It's Jeremy Bearimy. I don't know what to tell you. That's the easiest way to describe it.
Okay, but, what the hell is this? The dot over the I. The hell is that?
Okay, how do I explain this concisely? This is Tuesdays, and also July.
And sometimes it's never.
That's true. Occasionally, that moment on the Bearimy timeline is the time moment when nothing never occurs. So, you get it.
This broke me. The dot over the I. That broke me. I'm done.
You know what? I'm glad this whole thing happened because now I can go back to living my life the way I used to. Only caring about myself because being good is pointless.
No, please, Eleanor.
No, thank you. I'm outie. See you in hell. You know what I just realized? I always say that when leaving a room, but right now, it's accurate. I will literally see all of you in hell.
Not if I see you first.
Let's go, Jason.
No, look, you guys, this is not over. We have to stay together. Look, we'll figure something out. Like, just one idea I had, I could kill all of you.
That's my birthday.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Good Place Writers panel. Any questions? We are going to talk amongst ourselves for a little bit, and then we're going to take some questions from you. It's tempting to introduce this evening's panelists as the most talented, most intelligent, funniest writers. But somehow even that cheapens who they are and what they've accomplished together. And I don't want to objectify them that way. So, well, I guess let me just say, please welcome my hottest friends, Mike Schur, Megan Amram, Jen Statsky, Josh Siegel, Dylan Morgan, Matt Murray, Cord Jefferson, Cassia Miller, Dan Schofield, Andrew Law, Christopher Ensel, and Ray Sani. Welcome you all. Thank you so much for being here this evening. I want to start out by saying that a recent episode, the episode that just aired Thursday, included in that episode were visual references to several different things, including Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the television show Lost, as well as John Wick. And I guess I'd like to go down the line and start by asking each of you, what was some of your early influence in comedy? What were your favorite movies or television shows growing up? What were the things that made you say, oh, I want to go into this? Ray Sani.
Down the line, over here.
Towards me. Everything ends with me.
Oh, all right. So I started out as a stand-up comic. So my influence was that. What happened was my brother and I were terrible children looking for porn in our parents' video cabinet. We found a VHS tape that said Raw on it. And it wasn't what we was looking for. But I fell in love with stand-up comedy because my porn searches took me to Eddie Murphy, and then obviously everything after that. You know, every Chappelle show was the thing when I was in high school, and that was, Eddie Murphy taught me what stand-up was, and Dave Chappelle made me want to do it and see what I could make on TV, and so that's where that came from.
Very cool.
Hi, mine's way less porny, but dozens of TV shows, but the movie Big always really inspired me because as a kid I always wanted to be much older than I was, and now that I'm an adult I guess I want to be much older still, so like, yeah.
That was unexpected. I think everyone here.
Anyway.
You want to be dead.
Yeah, that'd be great. So yeah, the movie Big, great.
The first TV show that I remember like really being obsessed with was News Radio. I like watched every episode multiple times, and then I used to like record them onto like a VHS, and then as soon as I had finished doing that, they released like the DVD, and I was like, why did I do that? But like the first show that I remember like really being obsessed with the mythology and like reading every recap, which I think thankfully a lot of fans do for this show, is Lost. I was like totally obsessed and would just like go online the next day and try to find all the Easter eggs. So I guess it makes sense that this last episode that aired, I got to rip off some of it.
I was also a kid who...
I'm sorry, Dan Schofield, if you could, every time you speak today, if you could speak as Sean. Dan Schofield does a Sean impression. It's worth it.
No. When we have read-throughs and Mark can't be at the read-through, we get Dan to read Mark's parts because Dan's natural speaking voice sounds a little like Mark, and Mark is now obsessed with making Dan talk like him. It's like the ultimate ego trip where Mark is like...
It's the only reason I'm here tonight.
Talk like me.
But I'm not nearly as naughty a bitch as you are.
Oh. You can use your own voice.
Oh, thank you. I was also someone who taped a lot of shows off TV. My parents wouldn't let me watch a lot of TV, so I had to go for maximum efficiency. I would tape a lot of The Simpsons. I taped a lot of Northern Exposure. And that was one that, as it sort of got into questionable quality in its later seasons, that was one of the first times that I realized that like people wrote television shows. And that it was like a job that existed in the world. And so that was a moment that sort of clicked for me with that show, which was, oh, well, people get to do this. People get to make up these stories I love.
I guess I'll be the first one to be basic and say SNL. I used to, my mom always watched it in the kitchen, and I used to just sneak down after my time, and as long as we didn't make eye contact, I was like allowed to stay and watch. And so I just remember being like on the hard kitchen chair, just like not moving, but watching SNL with her. So I loved that, and then I also loved the Golden Girls and Are You Being Served? We had 4 channels growing up, so that was another one of my favorite shows.
I was indoctrinated from a very early age by my father's taste in comedy, and so I remember a lot of like Richard Pryor vinyl records and George Carlin and Bob Newhart. Those were sort of like on regular rotation in my living room when I was growing up. But it was always fine. I was like, okay, this is, I guess, kind of interesting. George Carlin kind of missed me. I think he thought he was brilliant, but for me, the things that...
Did you say, I think he thought he was brilliant? Is that what you said?
Yeah. I mean, my dad really did think that... I listened to like the 7 Dirty Words thing, and it doesn't resonate with me the way it did with my father. Maybe it's a generational thing, but the first thing that I can remember seeing that like really felt important to me was The Simpsons. That was sort of like something that I came to on my... That's all right, Hugh.
The Simpsons are here.
I think that's a pretty common opinion, but yeah. But The Simpsons for me was something that I found on my own that my parents both hated and disliked, and so it was. But I sort of glommed onto it very early on, and then. The second thing was probably Seinfeld. Seinfeld was like the first adult show that I remember watching and liking and feeling like, oh, this is highbrow. I understand this. Like, this is like sophisticated New York comedy. And I was like growing up in Tucson, Arizona.
We know what you mean by New York comedy.
New York comedy?
Yeah. We get it. We get it, Cord.
Oh, we get it.
Classic Cord.
I guess William Shakespeare. No. I remember also watching with my dad, being like 7 or 8 and being able to stay up late to watch Monty Python. And like not understanding any of it at all, but my dad laughing really hard, so I was like, yeah, this is funny. And yeah, but then eventually I started getting it when I was like 20.
That was a grenade. That took a second to be like, 20.
Honestly, the question makes me a little nervous because this is sort of a ageist profession and you age out of it pretty fast. Anyway, I guess like Digimon and Dragon Ball Z.
The worst. Shut up, Glenn.
Until you said that, I didn't realize that sensation I was feeling, which was that I'm a million. But I want to, Cheers. Cheers was a big deal for me growing up. Oh, a smattering of applause.
You're like saying cheers to the, what are you saying?
Oh no, see, this is the problem with these young people.
Yeah.
No, it was a show. You'll look it up, but it's good.
My parents didn't pay a lot of attention to me growing up, so I should have been looking for porn, and I'm realizing it was a missed opportunity.
Yeah, girl.
But Mary Tyler Moore Show was like a huge influence for me. Wow, more than Cheers. Sorry, Josh.
You're such a feminist, Jen.
Oh, and Megan Amram's Twitter.
Yeah.
A huge influence.
It's awesome for Jen that she gets to work with her hero. Jen and I aren't allowed to sit next to each other at work.
I was going to bring this up.
So.
This is true. We, Mike, are you okay with this?
Yeah.
We're not allowed to sit next to each other in the writer's room, so this is amazing.
What a pleasure.
This is huge.
Truly a Sunday night with my best friend.
Sunday night with my hero.
Yeah, thank you. Well, my comedic influences, everyone else took my bits already, so I guess I'm just sort of like a weirdo, so I really loved The Simpsons growing up. It was really influential to me. But I also really I was like equally obsessed with The Simpsons and The Twilight Zone, so this is like an amazing show to get to work on because it's kind of bridging the gap. Thanks, Jen.
The problem with being on a panel this size is when you go last, everyone has taken your answers. And it's not only that everyone took the answers, but I was going to do Murray's bit. I was going to say, like, the works of Charles Dickens or something.
I was going to say the Bible.
There you go. The 2 funniest books, Charles Dickens and the Bible. No, it's boring now, but it's Cheers and SNL and The Simpsons and I don't know, who cares? Like everybody has said a bunch of stuff. But for the record, the reason that Jen and Megan are not allowed to sit next to each other in the writer's room is because when they do, everything grinds to a halt. Like, and not only does everything grind to a halt, but I personally am assaulted with offensive jokes at my expense. And at a certain point, it just became out of a sense of it wasn't quite at the level of a thing you would talk about in therapy, but it felt like that, where it was I just need to stand up for myself and get through the day, and the only way I can think to do that is to physically separate them. And you have to admit, it made a lot more gets done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The future is female, Mike.
I know. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that me personally, I went home sad every day.
That's fair.
Because of the things he would say
Mike,
about
that's
me.
the nicest thing you've ever said to us. Thank you so much. Thank you.
To the rest of the writers, is it good that Megan and Jen are separated?
Yeah. Yes.
I feel like if anyone, when they first heard that, was like, oh, that's weird, that's wrong, in about 10 minutes you're going to be like, no, I get it. Could they separate now?
And then in 12 minutes, someone from Vulture is going to come out and move Jen down to where Ray is sitting.
Mike, where did the idea for The Good Place come from? I won't ask you that unless you have a great answer.
Unless my answer has changed from the last 50 times you've asked me.
Fine. When assembling this team, what did you look for? Because I know that you didn't know everybody, right? What sort of questions did you ask about their history as writers, but also what would you ask your friends when you were asking about some of these guys?
I knew many of these people from Parks and Recreation or otherwise. More than Mary Tyler Moore Show. But the ones I didn't, I read stuff they wrote, obviously, but then I think I was most interested in I hate the word, but it's diversity, but it's not ethnic diversity. It's intellectual diversity, I think. I remember talking to Andrew about what he studied in college, and I remember talking to Ray about doing stand-up in New York, and there were enough of us who had worked together from Parks and Rec who were coming over to this show where I was I know exactly what that crew is, and I was just looking for things that were not what that crew is. And that proved to be a pretty good way to go about it, I think. I mean, there isn't a ton of, the reason diversity is a lame word is because it is used as a sort of catch-all to just mean people who aren't white. But the intention of this kind of diversity was just was more, I don't know what you would even call it. It was more it was sort of intellectual background diversity or something. And that, and because the show is weird and we do a lot of weird stuff and we're constantly emailing each other, listen to this podcast or read this article that someone wrote. The guy who's the sort of main philosophical advisor of the show is a professor from Clemson, and Dan Schofield found him. We were talking about what happens to a person's sense of moral philosophy or ethical worldview if that person is immortal. And Dan went and found this guy who had written a book called Death about that exact thing. It was what happens if you're immortal? Do you care about ethics? And we read the book, and then I called him, and he ended up being our main advisor guy. So that is the result of having people who are just intellectually curious. I think that's the way to. I've now forget everything I just said. Throw that in the garbage. That was all. That was all bad. That was bad. We'll just edit this out.
For sure.
We're not live, right? We can edit this out.
No one's here.
It's intellectual curiosity is the way I would put it. Just people who are curious about the world in different ways.
Okay, you can make in future you can make your answers longer. How many of you have been on all 3 seasons? How many of you have been on 2 seasons? Okay. And this is the first season for Ray and for Kasia, right? For those of you, I guess for all of you, for anyone, how does this writer's room differ from others that you've worked in?
It's the most pleasant one that I've been in by 1,000 times.
What others have you been in? No. How so? What's the difference?
Mike is really tuned in to how everybody's feeling. Like, everybody's treated as important, everyone's listened to, and, like he was saying, he's really assembled a team of people who are really different from each other and, like, have different kinds of feelings and are different at expressing themselves, but, like, is the glue that makes everyone cohesive, and, like, it's a good place to be.
Thanks, Dylan.
Did you finish looking at my contract yet?
I've never sat on couches before this writer's room, and I really like that. It's like
Talk about the layout of the writer's room. There are a couple of different venues, right?
Yeah, we have a couch area where we break stuff. Chairs, no, I'm just kidding. The story, we like talk bigger picture ideas in the couch area, and then when we're writing, we sit in front of computer screens. But it's so nice just to like hang on a couch. I don't know, it feels like you get your creative juices going and it feels less precious or something than being like at a board table.
Think of the ugliest couches you can think of, and then up that times 1,000. Because they are the ugliest, beigest couches.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, Jen and I aren't allowed to sit next to each other either
on the couches. Yeah.
Or at the computers.
Either section.
Yeah. So just for your mental map.
I moved to Los Angeles to write for this show, and I do not like this town, but it's okay, it's fine. I'm here. I signed a list. But I've only had 2 good days in LA, and the one of them was when we had that professor that Mike was talking about come in and talk to us. I'm a dropout from school, so I hadn't done learning like that in a long time. And it was just the most exciting kind of intellectual space I'd been in a while. And it was fun, and everybody was brilliant and open, and it's the best time I've had in a room, I think. That was really cool.
Think going off that, like this, and like what Mike was saying about intellectual diversity, it's like I've never before been so like academically challenged at a television show, which is awesome. And I think like we're all really, especially in like what is going on in the world right now, trying to find some like real meaning.
What's going on in the world right now?
The baseball just ended. There's a big World Series. But just trying to find, I think we're all trying to make a very funny show that also has both academic and real moral meaning to it. And so it's very fun to go into work and like talk about papers that we all read. I mean, that's fun for me. And I think for all of us. I don't know if that's fun for you.
I've definitely read them. Yeah.
I mean, Jen's wearing a leather jacket. This girl doesn't care about homework.
There's no room for books on a Harley, baby.
And I would just like to add that when the rule about Megan and Jen not sitting together first came up, the way that it happened was Jen moved to the other side of the table. So I was sitting at the head of the table, and like Megan was here and Jen was here. And I realized I had totally screwed myself, because then it was like a pincer movement. It was like crossfire coming at me, and it was worse. So we had to literally move one of them down to the other end of the table. And now the person who sits at the other end of this long table is called, there's a name for it.
Yeah, the dark showrunner.
The dark showrunner. It's like it's like the evil underminer who sits at the opposite end of the table other than me and just tries to like destroy all of the work that's being done by all the other people. And that's usually where one of these two people is sitting.
That's right.
Yeah.
Did any of you have backgrounds in philosophy prior to doing this job?
I think Mike sort of mentioned this, but I was a political philosophy major, which is the only time that degree has ever helped anyone. But when I met with him for my interview, he was like, "Is there any chance you've ever read any philosophy?" And I was like, "Oh my God, yeah." And then he was like, "Cool, because so I've been reading some Foucault, and so what do you think about that?" And I was like, "Okay." So I flew in from New York. I'm very tired, and yeah. So
it would be a lot. Like, are there any of you for whom like that seemed daunting to be to go back into high school and college level stuff and have to do the homework?
Yeah.
You're not going to admit that. You're not going to admit that.
I don't want to speak for anybody. You can all.
You know who didn't read it.
Well, no. The thing is that it paints this picture of us like taking long walks around like a college campus, like deeply engaged in conversation about it. We read like Wikipedia entries. Like it's not, you know what I mean? Like I don't want people to imagine that this is like an intensive like graduate level course. We mostly like listen to podcasts, or we find articles, or we find little things. When we were starting the show, I put together like a packet of a bunch of stuff that I had read, and some of it was kind of arcane, but it was also like. The message that I was saying to everyone who was reading was like, I don't know if I understand this, but like seems interesting. It's not. It's really not like this like super over the top thing, right?
No, totally. And it's also helpful, I think, because I often feel like Eleanor, at least in season 1, trying to learn it and figure it. You know, like we don't have. I don't anyway. Like an incredible handle on it.
We're all Eleanors. None of us is cheating.
Yeah.
Also, I've been doing this now for 18 years, and it is refreshing to use your brain in a writer's room. It's like a lot of shows you're just making dumb poop jokes.
What shows
That's
are those?
Cool too.
What shows are those?
IMDb me, baby.
What are some of the swear word alternatives that we haven't heard or that won't make it?
Oh, we just put in one that we've never used. I just put it in an episode that we're. It's in. I won't say what's happening. It's in 11, and it's deckheads.
Well, I think there was one that Dylan pitched that I advocated for super hard that you wouldn't let us use. It was soak my deck.
Soak my deck.
Soak my deck.
Again, Dylan pitched it, not mine, but I felt passionate about it.
Thank you, Jen.
Art.
Like Murray said, we get to use our brains, finally. Such a beautiful thing.
Talk a little bit about, we sometimes on the podcast hear reference to the candy bag, what is the candy bag?
Dylan, talk.
As a way of illustrating the difference I was talking about before between other shows and this one.
The other terrible shows.
Other shows, they're called the scrap pile. And in this show is the candy bag. And it's all the jokes that you wrote that didn't quite fit in, but you try to get them when you're on set and get alternate versions of lines and stuff.
Yeah, like a good example is like in the Jacksonville episode this year, we did this whole run about Double Trouble, which is a combination body spray / energy drink.
You both it.
That was something from season 1, right? Season 1.
Yeah, it was actually something from the audition sides for Jason Mendoza.
And it was just a joke that we really liked and just got cut for time or whatever, and then, we pulled it out.
But also, like, the candy bag will have, like there's a thing where they're like, it comes in 3 flavors, and one of them is like cedarwood, melon, blast, or whatever. Like, the candy bag will also have, like, 8 other alts that, like, you can throw at the actors, when you're shooting. This show, as the candy bag isn't used as much, I would say, as some other shows because everything is kind of tightly scripted, and we're so concerned with getting the story as it's intended to be that we don't have a ton of time for that stuff. But when we do, it's great. That Jacksonville episode that Murray wrote, that was like insane because it was like we have this dumb guy on the show who's from Jacksonville, and then we're like, what if we do an episode where there's 3 of him? And so there were 3 dumb guys from Jacksonville, and we just gave all of them a million Jacksonville jokes, and it was endlessly delightful. Murray went off. We broke that episode, and I knew Murray was the right guy to write it. And I was like, here's the outline, or here's all the notes. Turn in the outline in 2 days, and like a day and a half later, he sent me an email. I was like, so I just wrote the script, and
I was in like a fugue state. It was just like I woke up and it was done.
And I was like, you literally wrote it in like a day and a half. He's like, yeah, I don't know, take a look. And I opened it, and at the top it said, open on exterior, Randy Macho Man Savage Non-International Airport, Jacksonville. And I was like, oh yeah, it's amazing. Like we're shooting everything he wrote. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Randy Macho Man Savage Non-International Airport with the added note that the non had clearly been added later. So The airport.
Yeah,
the
it was
airport,
once.
Well, at
Yeah.
one point, they flew to Cuba or something.
Yeah, direct to Colombia, probably.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I should have mentioned that we're going to talk and spoil anything that's aired so far, and I think we're safe within this room. When did you decide, when did you know that Donkey Doug was Jason Mendoza's
Oh, man.
father?
All right, look. Listen. Every one of these writers is amazing and talented and wonderful, but it's Matt Murray again. So here's what happened. We were like, okay, we need Jason to like want to save somebody, because we're at this point in the season where everyone's going to like try to save somebody, put them on the path to getting more Good Place points. And we had never met Jason's parents, and so I was like, I feel like I want him to save his dad or something. And there was like, but all he talks about is Pillboy. He talks about Blake Bortles, and he talks about Pillboy, his friend Pillboy. He's mentioned a couple other people, like some other guy, Donkey Doug, from his dance troupe a couple times. And then Murray said, he was like, what if he says, I want to save my dad, and they say, why do you want to save your dad? We never hear you talk about him. And he says, what are you talking about? I talk about Donkey Doug all the time. And this is not a joke. It caused me physical pain. It was so awful, because the things that we had learned about, what did we learn about Donkey Doug to that point?
He framed Sheila.
He framed his, yes, that's right.
For boogie board theft?
For stealing boogie boards. He was his best pop and locker. He was in his dance. That's it.
They'd split crews, and then he'd.
He started a rival dance crew. Donkey Doug had left his dance crew, formed a rival crew, and then Jason had gotten his dance crew to go meet them at night and slash all of their tires. That's his dad.
Yeah.
And when Murray pitched that, what if his dad is Donkey Doug, I grabbed my stomach and doubled over in pain like I had been punched. And I still, to this day, it's one of the saddest things that anyone's ever pitched.
Yeah.
It's so deeply sad.
Because when we were talking about Jason's dad, the model we used was Justin Bieber's father.
Yes.
Because it's like one of those dads that like is like, I'm not your dad, I'm like your bro.
Yeah.
Because there's a very famous Instagram photo of naked Justin Bieber, and his dad commented on the photo, "What do you feed that thing?" That's real.
That really happened in America. That happened to two humans in America.
He's Canadian, but yeah.
Whatever. His dad was in America. That's amazing that just happened, by the way. Dan is the logic police on the show. But anyway, the point is, that was it's still to this day the saddest thing that's ever happened to me. I'm not kidding. I've lost grandparents. I've had personal tragedies, but that moment is the saddest moment of my life.
As soon as it happened, I remember very distinctly, you just looked into space and you said, "Oh no."
It's so sad. It's so deeply, terribly sad. I'm having the same reaction right now.
You did double over a moment ago.
Yeah.
I've visited the writer's room a few times against my will, and it's intimidating because it's these minds and more that make up the room, and you just know that they are working on a different level. Talk a little bit about the culture of the room, though. On one hand, it seems like it's straight up the dorms. Like, it seems like it's just bits and couches and a lot of coffee. I asked Joe Mandy about it, and he mostly talked about being a barista. But talk about the hours that you're, like the basic makeup. What's a day like in the writer's room? How much time is spent working? Because it seems like not much. And then a little bit about the culture of kind of no jerks.
I mean, I'll say the hours are some of the most civilized hours of any show I've ever worked on, and I've worked on some pretty bad hour shows.
Like what?
IMDb me, baby. No, it's for as heady and as like logically complicated as the show is, you would think we stay till all hours, but no, Mike's very courteous to our families, and we're not burning the midnight oil or anything.
But what are the hours? When do you come in?
10 usually, and we're usually out before dinner time.
Oh, we're supposed to be there at 10?
Leather jacket, baby. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the culture seems really collegial. It seems like there's not a lot of ego. It doesn't seem like I would guess that on other shows, there's more of a sense of the seniority in the room. Am I right about that? No one's going to answer that.
I will say that coming in, I came in the second season, and I was incredibly intimidated because I was a huge fan of Parks and Rec, and I was a huge fan of sort of so many of the other shows that these guys had worked on, and I was terrified, and I thought that, you know, it was going to be cliquey, and sort of people were going to be mean to me, and it was like my you know.
Junior high.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I came in, and it was never like that. And it was, I think that sort of something that is just overwhelming in the room is just a sense of kindness from everybody. These are some of the warmest, friendliest people I've ever worked with. And I think that, you know, other people can speak to, Dylan sounds like can speak to rooms in which that is not the case necessarily. And I think that, you know, it's just sort of like truly a pleasure to come to work every day. Everybody is just so entirely friendly, and I think that comes from the top down in my experience.
Yeah, Ray and I were new this year and immediately welcomed to use the girl blanket, which was like a huge, there's blankets that only the girls can use, and day one we were invited to just cuddle.
Snuggle up in there, Cassie.
Yeah, and we did, and we truly felt welcome.
Yeah, if anything, I'd say the room is maybe 1 degree too cold usually. So,
and we bought blankets at the Universal store.
They're gorgeous. If you're ever there, yeah.
We got them dry cleaned this year, and they're even more sheeny than ever.
It was like really important. One of the like first emails that they sent to Cassie and I was about this girl blanket, and.
It was me and Jen being like, we're going to show you the ropes. First of all, there's a girl blanket. That's it.
End of email.
It's really important because I'm super anemic, so I'm also girl code and cold, and then low hemoglobin code. Yeah. And Megan didn't know that, but she was ready for me, and I really appreciated it.
That makes me feel so good. And non-blanket related, I'd say, just to fill in your question, we also are, there's like a lot of writers on the show. We're often like working in 2 groups at once. So we'll have like one group breaking a story.
One with you and one with Jen?
Often.
Yeah.
Often. You know, it's funny. I never thought about it like that. But
this is the most time I've ever spent with Megan.
Would you guys mind if we just catch up? But yeah, so we'll have like a group breaking a story on the beige couches, and then maybe another group working on a script at the computers. So just pound it out.
That's not what that means. That's not what that means.
What? Pound it out under the girl blanket. That's just
all ages crowd. All ages crowd. Mike, the same thing holds true on set. Like everybody on set. I've made reference to this on the podcast. There's a podcast. You should listen to the podcast.
Number's low for the
it's called
podcast.
The Good Place, the podcast.
Where can people get it?
It's available where podcasts are available.
Oh.
Computers, I think.
And is there like a rotating host, like different weeks?
No, one host.
One host?
Yeah, all-time host. Great
must
host.
be pretty good.
It must be really
Great
good
host.
if he hosts every episode.
Best host.
This is a fraction of why.
We're helping.
Do you believe that? You create a great culture. Everyone, the reference I made to the podcast was that we've talked about very ambitious things on this show, including the episode "Don't Let the Good Times Pass You By" with a fairly enormous fight sequence that just took place. And I was there. Thank you. I credit myself. On a day like that, we shot that over a couple of days, several days maybe. And it should have been scary and panic-filled, and it's not, because you hire the best people, and you say to them, I'd like this to happen, and they look at the room and they go, okay. And they go and make that happen. I've been asked on the internet why you are not teaching a college-level management class.
Well, there's several reasons, Mark. Start with the pay. Look, the truth of the matter is that the culture of the show was really nice and warm and friendly, and that was also true of Parks and Rec and other shows I've worked on, but that is not I wouldn't say that I should take the credit for that, frankly, because for example, that I was never on set once, right, for the fight. Actually, I went down to see everything at the very beginning, but the reality is that culture on the set is largely due to people like Morgan Sackett, who's the producer of the show, and the people that he found and hired who run the different departments, our costume department and our props department, all those departments. Those people are all incredibly nice and talented and kind. And the director of that episode was Dean Holland, who directed, I think, 30 episodes of Parks and Rec, and I've known him for 10 years, and he's a lovely person. And so, it's never, whatever the culture of a show is, it's not one person who, one bad apple or whatever, what's the phrase? One bad apple can spoil the something? That's it, right? Yeah. Can spoil the something? Yeah. One bad apple can spoil the something.
Writer. It sounded gorgeous, so I think that's it.
I think like if you're making a show and like Charlie Sheen is like the star of the show, he can make everyone's life miserable, right?
Wait, really?
Yeah. But if you have one like nice person, that doesn't necessarily mean that the whole show is going to be nice. It takes a sort of concerted effort by all of the people who work on the show in any level of sort of management or supervision, and that's what we have. And that really starts with that's a lot about Morgan Sackett, who's not here. I don't know why I'm praising him. He can't hear me.
It's his birthday.
And I would also say Kristen Bell and Ted Danson.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. Ted Danson, the world's nicest living human being. I sometimes get a phone late in the afternoon, and I'll see my phone and it's like Ted Danson, and I'll have a panic attack, and he's calling me to say that he had a really fun time at work today. Literally. It's insane. It's crazy. Because the truth is that the answer to the question that Mark asked first about why I'm a writer is Cheers. The answer is Cheers for me personally. And so when I see Ted Danson's calling me, I think it's a prank and first, and then I think, oh no, he's furious and he's quitting. And really, he's calling me to tell me that he had fun at work. That's not a thing you have to do if you're Ted Danson. You can get away with not calling people and saying that you had fun. You don't have to do that. But he does it because he's like the world's nicest person, and the same is true of Kristen. Like, they're just lovely people. The whole cast is, everybody. Manny Jacinto is like the sweetest. I don't know how do you describe
it's
what
gross.
Manny
It's gross.
It's
He's
disgusting.
So nice. Yeah,
it's awful. It's really awful. He's nice at a level that it makes you realize how terrible you are. Right? That's the only way to say it. And everyone in the cast, they're all incredibly nice people. So that culture of the show it's a giant group effort, I'll say.
Do you have questions? Yeah? All right. We have microphone runners coming out, so raise your hands and make yourselves known, those of you who have questions. In the meantime, I will ask this, just as kind of a general thing. What would any of you offer as something you wish you had known to any aspiring writers in the crowd? What is something that you wish you knew maybe 10 years ago?
Kind of know everything.
Is that right?
Yeah.
From those bad shows?
I'll go ahead and... Can I field this one?
You may.
Okay. Actually, this goes out to a lot of people of color, I think, being one. I would say if I could tell my younger self something, it would be it's okay if you're not ready for something. You know, like I think it's amazing that there are diversity efforts and that people are actively seeking out young, diverse writers who have something to offer. And it's very hard when you're that young to say, I'm not ready for this audition, or I don't think I would be able to handle this job, or whatever. And if I could go back in time, I would say to give myself the option to say, I'm just not ready for that right now, and I'm going to make a fool of myself, because I did make a fool of myself several times. And I think that it's important because when you are young and hungry and feel like you're not represented, it can often feel like you don't have any option but to take whatever scraps you're given. And be kind to yourself and don't feel like you have to do that.
I would piggyback on that and just say that also Hollywood is getting better about it, but also sort of like directed more toward women and people of color, the understanding that your stories are valid and the things that you want to write are valid. I think that oftentimes we trick ourselves into thinking that like our stories aren't the ones that to be told and there's not an audience for it, or so you sort of take yourself out of the game. But understanding that what you have to say and the stories that you want to tell are valid and there is an audience for it. So, I mean, give it a shot. I think that a lot of us sort of tend to think that, you know, the things that Louis C.K. has to say or the things that Colin Jost has to say are sort of like the typical, what you think of sort of like as the typical comedy writer, the things that they have to say are going to sort of be more marketable or more important to people than what you have to say, and I think that that's not the case.
Excellent. First question, please.
Just from season 1 to season 2 and then even season 3, it feels like you've burned through so many versions of the show and just sort of what's happening. So I was wondering, are there versions of the show that you wish you got to spend more time writing, or what's been your favorite part of getting to sort of reinvent it?
I mean, I think that you're right that we have burned through plot pretty quickly, and to me, there's really no place that I wish we had stayed longer. Early on season 1, I think Mike gave a mandate which was super helpful, which was like, let's just get to things quicker. Let's not, like, if we know there's something exciting, let's get there and challenge ourselves then to keep going and think of what it could be beyond there, which has been both a very like exciting exercise in writing sitcoms, because that's not normally how sitcoms are. So I think for me, it's been fun and just a good challenge. And I don't wish we had stayed anywhere longer, because I'm always excited about where we're going next.
And to blow the smoke up the butts of the people who watch the show, it's like everyone is extremely smart, and like people have learned how to watch TV in a way that is so incredible to me, because like everyone is so diligent and observant. And I think some of the fun we have is trying to stay ahead of the very smart people who are watching our show and to constantly try to trick in some ways and like surprise the people watching it. So rather than like wanting to linger on something, the fun becomes when you know that something crazy is going to happen and hopefully it lands and people are surprised.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question.
I was wondering if you could just, it feels like each season has like a different philosophical question it's kind of addressing. And I was just sort of wondering if you could talk about like how, when you're breaking the season, you sort of decide like, okay, this is what we're going to sort of ask this season.
That sort of comes a little organically, I think, out of the discussion that we have at the beginning of the year. I mean, we've also, because we knew the whole first season before we even started writing it, we were able to talk about season 2 while we were writing season 1. And so by the time we got to the end, we kind of knew what season 2 was a little bit. We knew that it was about getting Michael on their team, like Michael failing a bunch of times and him sort of defecting and like a little bit of a spy double agent story, and then him slowly realizing that maybe the point system was unfair and stuff like that. So we're able to kind of like know a year in advance what the general idea of what season the next season is going to be. So it happens a little bit sort of organically, and then it also happens because again, people are like poking around and like finding articles and podcasts and stuff, and says like, this is an interesting thing. This sort of affects our show. Someone sent, I don't even remember who sent me a cool article about like why Aristotle is really relevant today, like a magazine article, and I read the whole thing halfway through the year and was like, oh, this is really meaningful. I mean, when I say I read the whole thing, I read like 6 pages. It was really long. But
so Dan sent it. It was Dan
probably
who sent
Dan.
it.
Was it?
It was me.
It? There you go. It's usually Dan. So it's not like we right now have an idea of what season 4 is in a very, very general way.
Go on.
No. And so the trick is to like have some juicy ideas and then go into the season and get the whole brain trust together and start talking about it, but not to sort of decide too early, because if someone has a better idea, we always want to follow that better idea. So it's sort of like it's having stuff to hold on to, but also being willing to sort of risk throwing it all away if someone comes up with something better. It's a dicey proposition for a show like this, but again, we've been a year ahead every year. Or at least half a year ahead, so it makes it more possible. Like, we'll get together in a couple weeks, really, long before this season ends airing. We'll get together for a couple days and like talk big picture stuff about next year, and that'll begin that process.
Is there a next year?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I assume if they cancel us now, I would be really pissed. That would be terrible. Yeah, I guess they haven't picked us up yet. God damn it. All right.
Is it true that the working title of season 4 is The Sean Chronicles? Next question, please.
Wait, I just want to say one thing. Okay. I'm not going to say what it is, but the best joke we did all year, I was talking about this backstage, the best joke we did all year is a joke that Mark gets to deliver. It's in the 12th episode. There's a moment at which, and I won't say anything.
What are you doing?
I'm just
What are you doing?
I just want everyone. I'm just so excited about it. I'm so excited about it. It's my favorite joke.
My heart is pounding.
You'll know it. You'll know it when you see it. It's a joke Mark gets to deliver. He arrives in a place unexpectedly, and he delivers a joke, and it's my favorite joke of the whole year. And I'm really excited about it. It won't air for like a month and a half. You're gonna all forget that this ever happened.
Please.
Jesse here. 1 second. So Mark's character doesn't arrive somewhere unexpectedly in episode 12, so we think he means this joke from episode 11.
And then Turtle makes a bet with Ronda Rousey, and if she loses, she has to bow. Come on! It's just in the middle of torturing William Shakespeare by describing the plot to the Entourage movie. What is this?
The new information is coming.
Yes, next question.
My question is actually about favorite jokes. I'm just wondering, when you look back on the last 3 seasons, what's your favorite joke that still kind of cracks you up that either you or a coworker are responsible for?
Great question.
Great question.
You mean from the show or like a thing somebody said in the room? Seriously. Anything. And literally anything.
The thing that I've laughed hardest at in the moment watching the show this year is a joke that Josh pitched, and it's when Ted Danson says that he loves to sit on the toilet and shoot one out.
Okay. A demon trying to approximate a
Sit
human.
on the thing and shoot
Sit
one
on
out.
the thing and
Yeah.
shoot one out.
Sit on
yeah.
the thing.
Write what you know. That's what they say, you know? There's a joke, I really think it was Cassia, and I think about it all the time, and it was in the Jacksonville episode where Tahani pauses in fear and says, in addition to all the other things that have been happening, also, I've seen a lot of dog hair, and I haven't seen a dog.
That was I love that joke so much. I didn't say it.
Are you sure?
I'm
Who said it?
positive.
Sorry,
I don't know.
guys.
Who said it? I don't know. It's
How do
bad
you not
to take
know?
credit if you didn't say it.
Cassia, you
How do you
said
not
it.
know, and how hasn't one of you just taken credit for it right
Cassia,
now?
take credit for it. It was
Yes.
Cassia. Remember? We all remember it was
Yeah,
Cassia.
There's a, it's not quite a joke so much, but so the Jeremy Bearimy thing happened in the room, in part because I am a lot less smart than these people. And so Mike was trying to explain time, and I didn't get it for a full afternoon. I'm the new on the staff, I'm the least experienced, and I'm boldly, interrupting their ability to tell a story because I don't understand how time works. And Josh just was like, what about Jeremy Bearimy? That's how you explain the time. And so when Chidi says the dot on the I is what broke my brain or whatever, that's actually what happened in the room. What happened to Chidi's brain there happened to my brain.
She's being modest because what was happening was she was like, well, how can events be happening on Earth, but they're not happening in the afterlife? And we were like, well, we're trying to say that this, and she was like, yeah, but that doesn't make any sense. And she was totally right. And so we were searching for a way to pithily explain, to answer all of the natural questions that would come up. And then Josh giggled out loud. He actually giggled at his own thought. And which is very rare. And he was like, what if Michael just says that the timeline is Jeremy Bearimy? And it was another one of those things where we could have pitched, the entire room could have pitched for 2 weeks of solutions to explain what we need to explain, and nothing would have beaten Jeremy. It saved us so much time. Because it's basically a middle finger, right? It's like, Do you have a problem with the way that you think time works? Too bad. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
And it was such a quick solve too, because
Oh.
I'd been like, I was sitting there like, I was like, Mike, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be annoying, but I just don't get it. And Josh was just like, how about this? And it was great.
Everybody's being very nice in a way that suggests I'm dying or something. But I will say this.
You know how time is infinite? Your time, sadly, is not.
You're the upper
Well,
line.
this is the way I want to learn about that. What's so great about this room, about every person in this room, is that you can laugh at your own dumb thing and you say it. And I believe what I first said was Jeremy. And then people are like, no, there's got to be a B. Everyone got it right away, and then there's got to be a B in there. And then someone over here said like, well, there has to be an I in it, because then we're really in trouble for what that dot over the I is. And then Megan goes off with it and writes all this funny stuff about Janet's birthday, and that it's Tuesdays in July and never. I mean, just, everyone gets to hang out with an idea.
And
makes you feel
then
really
the great
lucky.
thing is then all that group work happens, and then Megan writes this great script, and then we give it to Ted Danson. And then he goes, and he has a moment where he goes, so you get it. It's just like that's when it couldn't work out any better.
Is it true that what we see on screen is an approximation of Joe Mandy's handwriting of
Yeah,
that word?
we spent more time probably writing versions of the name Jeremy Bearimy than any other thing. And then Joe's a very talented artist, and we had him do it. But there was a really serious session where Joe Mandy had a Sharpie and was all these giant poster boards, and he was doing this very
Well, we were all working. He was writing Jeremy Bearimy over and over again. Yeah.
And then he would hold it up, and we would go, yes, maybe perhaps a little squigglier on the B or whatever. And then he would do it. He did it 500 times. Yeah. But yeah, the one you see is actually his handwriting, or his work, or whatever you call it.
And he's not here because he's retired on those residuals?
That's right.
Maybe one or two more questions, please.
So I really love that everyone in hell is just like a petty douchebag. Is that based on just true encounters? Where do you draw that from?
You guys don't know Joe Mandy. He's
I don't know. I mean, it's funnier than if they were really evil demons who were hedonistically ripping people's eyelids off and stuff. That doesn't sound that funny. I mean, to me, a lot of there was an episode that Dax Shepard guest starred in where they were actually in the bad place, and there was a group of dudes who worked in the toxic masculinity department. And I would say for me personally, if there's a hell and I go there, it'll be those dudes. Those will be the dudes.
So you two think ball taps are really funny?
Yeah. They've got 4 Bluetooth headsets in at all times, and that. It's a combination of it's just funnier, but also I don't know. We never said that we've never. There's a couple of rules on the show in terms of how we show actual, the bad place, no kids, that's too depressing and sad, and no, actual physical anguish. And I think that keeps the show from devolving into some weird meditation on human pain. It's much better to show toxic masculinity dudes who are just annoying, because I think at least for me, I'll say it that it would be what hell really is. Just a bunch of those dudes wearing no fear shirts and what you wrote, Murray wrote. Oh, the one guy was kicked off of Rob Gronkowski's party cruise for throwing a lobster at a stripper.
Yeah. Then he died doing a keg stand in the back of a Jeep Wrangler.
That's right. Total lord is how he's described. Yeah. That's my personal vision of hell.
That happened in my high school.
What philosophical questions have either caused any of you internal suffering or division, or have divided the room very strongly? And has that had any implications for the show, for the characters?
Dan remembers.
I don't know that there's been any loud, vehement philosophical arguments, right? I will say that, the free will versus determinism thing. So we wrote the episode 8 that aired was free will versus determinism, and none of us understood it, and we kept reading about it. And we were like, we sort of get it, but it's also very few people have written about it because there's sort of not that much to say. It's like either we have free will or we don't, and if we don't, then we don't, and if we do, then great. Like, it's sort of boring. But we kept reading about it, and eventually what happens in the episode is Eleanor is like arguing about how everything is deterministic in the universe, there's no free will. Eventually what happens is Michael just picks up a giant iced tea and dumps it over her head, because that's how we felt like while reading about it. It was like, this sucks, like this is is boring. And if you are the kind of person who gets like super into arguing that the whole world is deterministic, someone should dump an iced tea over your head, right? That's kind of like, but again, do you guys remember anything that was like a fight? I don't feel like, it's not like we're split down the middle between like Kantian and Bentham fans or something, like, right?
Bentham for life.
We should get like soccer jerseys that have like team deontology on the back.
We have time for one last question.
If a real good place actually exists, what do you hope is in it for you all? And can I please have a Janet in mine?
Boy, I don't know.
Just gotta have my girl. Just waiting for me.
It's us sitting together and Mike having to watch.
Yeah, it's basically,
That's mine.
this right now.
Yeah.
Welcome.
That's for a specific scenario in which you two get into the good place and I get into the bad place. And the two realms are like, oh my God, there's two birds with one stone. And we just design this one thing, and then everybody... I want to hear Encel. Encel, what's your good place?
Oh, my good place is just like the NBA League Pass all day. I think just a bunch of screens. I can see it all. And I never get bored.
You're like a fly. You're like a fly. You have like 50 eyeballs, and you can watch every NBA game at the same time. It's
glorious.
I think someone should guess someone else's good place.
Ooh, I like that.
That's such.
Oh yeah, everyone's feelings are going to get hurt. Real bad.
Thank you, Andrew.
Wait, maybe Dylan or Josh should guess the other's good place.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
That's a good
They've been
one.
writing partners for 20 years. They're basically married.
It would be too depressing for me.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next episode of The Good Place airs on Thursday, December 6th at 8:30, 7:30 Central. Please join me in thanking Ray Sani, Christopher Encel, Andrew Law, Dan Schofield, Cassia Miller, Cord Jefferson, Matt Murray, Dylan Morgan, Josh Siegel, Jen Statsky, sitting next to her, Megan Amram, and Mike Schur.
That's it for another episode of Good One. The Good Place airs on NBC. You can catch up on The Good Place on Hulu or Netflix. Good One is produced by Mike Comite. Justin D. Wright did our theme song. Rate, review, and rate the show on Apple Podcasts. 5 stars, please. And hey, if you know anyone who might like the podcast, what the heck, maybe tell them. You can email any comments, questions, or laughing around suggestions to goodonepodcast@gmail.com. I'm Jesse David Fox, and you can follow me at Jesse David Fox. We'll be back next week with a new episode and a new joke. Have a good one.
That was a HeadGum podcast.